You ever land a job you didn't apply for and realize too late that everyone thinks you're someone else? Jason wasn't trying to get hired. He was trying to get parking validated. Maintenance visit. Wrong floor. Wrong desk. Right time. They handed him a badge before he could explain. He thought it was for temporary access. It wasn't. 2 hours later, he was in an orientation room surrounded by Ivy League interns and a complimentary kombucha bar. He didn't correct anyone. Not because he meant to lie, but because every time he opened his mouth, someone said, "Oh, you're the contractor from D.C." He wasn't, but he had been to D.C. once. On a bus. Quick question, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And hey, if this story makes you clench your jaw, smirk, or whisper, "No way, that's Jason Statham," hit that subscribe button. Watch till the end, because what happens next might change how you look at mistakes forever. Jason sat through an onboarding seminar about cloud ethics while sipping coconut water he didn't ask for. Every slide made less sense. Every head nod around him more aggressive. He looked at the welcome packet. Position. Systems strategy consultant. Compensation. $185K/year. Start date. Today. And that's when Jason realized. They didn't want the real contractor. They wanted whoever they thought he was. Jason wasn't supposed to be in the building. He was supposed to be picking up a router. One floor, in and out, basic hardware install for a side client he barely remembered booking. But the woman at the front desk looked stressed, waved him through, handed him a visitor badge and said, "Conference room 8, they've been waiting." He nodded, figuring someone was behind on their scheduling. Maybe they were rushing all the IT contractors through. The elevator had glass walls and smelled like eucalyptus. By the time he stepped out on floor 27, his name was printed on a sticker that read Jason Shaw, Strategy Consultant. He paused. That wasn't right. But before he could ask, a man in a charcoal suit clapped him on the back. "Glad you made it, man. We were worried the flight delay would mess everything up." "You good?" Jason blinked. You want coffee?" "There's oat milk, macadamia. I think there's even a turmeric option." Jason looked past him. Glass-walled offices, people in sneakers and blazers. Too many buzzwords floating midair. He hesitated, then said, "Turmeric's fine." They ushered him into a meeting room inside. 7 people, laptops open, tablets glowing, a whiteboard with an entire workflow he couldn't decipher. Jason sat. Someone slid a deck across the table. "Your take on the Singapore rollout." He flipped the folder open. Read fast, too fast. He didn't know what most of it meant, but some part of his brain, the part that spent years troubleshooting broken systems with duct tape and borrowed firmware, saw a pattern. He leaned back. "You've got too many handoffs between architecture and execution. That's where the data's getting pinched." Silence. Then the guy next to him nodded slowly. "Exactly. That's what I've been saying for 2 weeks." Someone else muttered, "He gets it." Jason stared at the folder again. They thought he was a strategy consultant, and so far, he hadn't broken the illusion. He walked out of the meeting with a full visitor badge and a temporary ID that read Access. L27, L31. He still hadn't installed the router. Instead, they gave him a key card and told him to check out his workspace. The workspace was a glass pod with a standing desk, noise-canceling walls, and a digital whiteboard that recognized hand gestures. Jason didn't even know where the power button was. He waved his hand. It blinked. Then the real moment came. HR called. They had onboarding paperwork for him to sign. Jason almost bailed. He stood at the door for a full minute, one hand on the handle, debating how much trouble he'd be in for faking his way into a job. But then his phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. "Rent goes up next month. Let me know if you're renewing." And then another. "Nora's field trip needs a $75 deposit. Due Friday." Jason stared at the phone, then walked to the HR desk and signed the paperwork. By 3 p.m., he had a company email. By 5 p.m., they added him to the Slack channels. He spent the rest of the night learning what a Q4 baseline forecasting logic loop even meant. He Googled half the acronyms. The other half, he guessed. He came home to Nora asleep on the couch, still in her school uniform, chess book in her lap. He tucked her in, then sat on the floor, laptop glowing. He figured it'd fall apart in 24 hours. It didn't. The next day, he was in another meeting. And another. Someone handed him a touchscreen stylus and asked him to draw out his concept for stakeholder bottlenecks. He made a flow chart with 3 boxes and an arrow. Someone said it was insightful. That afternoon, someone on the internal message board posted, "Loving what Jason Shaw is bringing to the strategy stack. This guy sees around corners." Jason blinked. What stack? That night, he got his first paycheck stub, 2 weeks in advance, 4 digits. Clean, he stared at the number, then looked at his fridge, almost empty. He transferred the money. Groceries. Nora's field trip. A new pair of shoes for her, ones that didn't have holes, still felt like stealing. He figured someone would catch it, but no one did. 3 days in, he met one of the real consultants, Angela, from Boston, smart eyes, zero patience. She caught him looking too long at a heat map. "You're not from D.C.," she said. Jason froze. "You don't talk like them." He tried to smile. "Grew up in Chicago." She didn't blink. "You bluffed your way in." He paused, then said, "Accidentally." She stared, then said, "That's the most honest thing I've heard all week." Jason exhaled. Angela leaned in. "Don't get caught. This place doesn't punish mistakes. It deletes them." Then she handed him a USB. "Use this. It'll help." Jason took it. Didn't ask what was on it. He was learning. By Friday, he was on a plane. Company retreat, Napa Valley. Jason had never flown first class. They brought him wine he couldn't pronounce. Nora texted him a photo of her and her chess trophy. He smiled, full face, and realized he was living a lie. But somehow, he'd never felt more himself. Jason had never seen so much money spent on people pretending to relax. The retreat was spread over a vineyard estate bigger than the neighborhood he grew up in. Infinity pools, artisanal espresso carts, yoga domes made of glass. Everyone had name tags, but no one needed them. They all already knew who mattered, or thought they did. Jason stuck out. Not because of what he wore. They'd sent him a retreat wardrobe package with neutral polos and $200 joggers, but because he kept doing something no one else did. He listened. At breakfast, he overheard a product lead talking about compression cycles and overlap panic. He filed it away. During lunch, someone from legal mentioned a compliance vulnerability in the vendor pipeline. Another note. By dinner, Jason had a map in his head, not of titles and departments, but of stress, of fear, of pressure points nobody wanted to say out loud. He sat at the fire pit with a group talking about solution friction, and when someone turned to him and asked what his take was, he said, "Most of these departments are trying to solve different versions of the same problem, but they're all using their own language. It's not a strategy issue. It's a translation issue." Silence. Then someone muttered, That's actually dead on." Someone else took out a phone and started typing. Jason finished his drink and stared into the fire. Next morning, he woke up to find himself featured on the internal company blog. Shaw's Law, the language gap between teams is the real productivity killer. Jason blinked. The post quoted him almost exactly. Someone had typed up his fire pit comment and turned it into a full article. There was a comment thread. Likes, shares. Someone from HR messaged him directly. "We should talk about formalizing some of your thoughts, maybe build them into the next leadership brief." Jason leaned back in his hotel bed and laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. By day 3, people were seeking him out. "Jason, what do you think of this reorg plan? Can I get your opinion on the team alignment strategy?" "Hey, you got a second to walk me through your theory on adaptive silos?" Jason nodded, smiled, gave them his honest thoughts. Most of it was stuff he learned fixing chaos with duct tape. He didn't speak in buzzwords, just problems and people, and they treated it like gospel. But not everyone was impressed. At the wrap-up dinner, Angela cornered him again. Word is, you're catching attention. Jason nodded. I'm trying not to. You're failing. She sipped her drink. That's not bad, but it's dangerous. Why? Angela looked around. Because this company isn't built on talent, it's built on pedigree. And the second someone finds out you skipped the gate, they'll burn your name just to protect the illusion. Jason exhaled. So what do I do? Angela shrugged. Either keep rising or find the parachute before they push you. Jason looked at the USB she gave him back in the office. He still hadn't opened it. Later that night, he did. It wasn't spyware. It was a company map. Not HR's version. Angela's version. With departments marked in red, yellow, and green. Red meant hostile. Yellow meant neutral. Green meant allies. Jason was in a green zone now, but only barely. He stared at the screen until 3 a.m. Back home, Nora was waiting on the couch when he walked in. She had a chess app open and a notebook full of scribbled move sequences. You win? He asked. She nodded. 3 out of 4. Jason smiled. You're getting scary. She grinned. You smell like grapes and money, he laughed. Long weekend. He made breakfast while she replayed one of her matches from memory. Her queen sacrifice caught him off guard. Where'd you learn that? Video from an old tournament. 1998. Russian Grandmaster. Jason blinked. You're watching games older than you, she shrugged. They make more sense than math class. He packed her lunch with extra snacks. That afternoon, Jason got an email from corporate ops. Subject line: urgent, internal strategy briefing. L27 executive room, you're presenting. He clicked into the thread. Someone had turned his retreat comments into a slide deck and booked him for a full presentation to senior leadership. Jason sat very still. That was the moment it hit him. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. Now he was part of the story. He spent the next 2 nights studying. Not company decks, people. He memorized faces, language habits, where they liked to sit, how they interrupted, who they deferred to when they got stuck. Jason had played chess with Nora enough to know if you couldn't outthink the board, you could read the players. The day of the meeting, he wore the cleanest blazer he owned, brought a single note card, walked into the glass-walled executive room like he'd been doing it for years. They introduced him, Jason Shaw, bringing a fresh lens to vertical integration and strategy cohesion. He nodded politely, waited, then walked to the board and said, "You all know how this company works, but the problem is you don't know how each other works." He pointed to the whiteboard and drew 2 boxes and a line. People think strategy fails because of bad decisions. But it usually fails because of broken communication. You don't have a leadership gap, you have a language gap. Someone in the back muttered. That's the blog quote. Jason ignored it. Marketing says conversion funnel. Engineering hears retention panic. Legal hears risk exposure. You're saying the same thing, but no one translates. Silence. Then nods. Jason finished his 4-minute talk. No slides, no diagrams, just facts. They applauded, and just like that, Jason Shaw was officially a strategic alignment advisor. Still fake, still unpaid in truth. But now, he was shaping decisions. And somewhere deep down, he knew, eventually, the real Jason Shaw was going to show up. Or worse, someone would realize he already had. Jason didn't expect to become the guy people checked with before they launched anything. But 3 weeks after the executive presentation, he was getting tagged on internal threads he didn't even know existed, looping in Jason for strategic clarity. Before we move forward, want Jason's take on team cohesion here. Jason, can you sense-check this deck? He kept waiting for someone to ask for credentials, for HR to pull him aside, for a background check to light up and turn the whole building red, but it never came, because by now, nobody was checking for the paper trail. They were checking for results. Jason walked the floor differently. Not cocky, just aware, of how people paused when he passed, of how interns stopped him for advice, of how certain execs, the ones who wore sneakers and talked fast, suddenly lingered in elevators a little longer when he was around. He came home late one Thursday to find Nora on the living room floor building a chess puzzle from scratch. "In game trap?" he asked. She nodded. "I want it to look like I'm losing until the very last move." Jason smiled. "That's mean," she grinned. "It's better than being obvious." Jason sat beside her. "You're gonna rule the world. Only if they don't see me coming," he laughed, then frowned, because somewhere deep down he knew she got that from him. That weekend, the shift came. A woman named Celeste was promoted to director of operations. Jason had seen her in meetings. Smart, sharp, not warm. She called him into her office on Monday. "No hello, just, I've been reading your briefs." Jason sat. "Anything stand out?" She stared at him. "Yeah, the fact that none of them use department codes or reference archive protocol or cite procedural models." Jason stayed quiet. She leaned forward. "You talk like someone who never sat through an MBA. You move like someone who never had to unlearn common sense." Jason waited. She said, "Where did you actually come from?" He didn't blink. "Fieldwork, system patching, people failing quietly." She nodded slowly, then handed him a manila folder. "This is your next target. Cross-department audit. Too many project overlaps. We need clarity." Jason opened the folder, glanced at the mess of org charts, duplicated workflows, passive-aggressive emails printed out. He nodded. "I'll get you a read." Celeste said nothing, just added, "by Friday." Jason didn't sleep much that week. He started early, stayed late, mapped every project timeline to an old-school whiteboard, not digital. Real markers, real scribbles. It looked like a detective's wall by Thursday. Angela dropped by, raised an eyebrow. "You building a case or a conspiracy?" Jason didn't look up. "Bit of both." She glanced at the lines connecting 3 managers across 3 departments. "You're going to name names?" Jason nodded. "If I don't, the overlap gets swept under some new title, rebranded and buried." Angela studied him. "You're not just playing anymore." He looked at her. "No, I'm not." Friday morning, Jason submitted the audit. No fluff, just hard facts, duplicated projects, conflicting mandates. Leadership indecision masked by buzzword churn. At the bottom, a recommendation. Merge 2 teams. Fire a 3rd manager, the kind of move that made enemies. He expected silence. Instead, he got a meeting invite. Closed-door review. Ops audit brief J. Sure, 10 people in the room. Celeste at the head. Jason walked in, set down a single printed sheet and spoke, not loud, just clearly. "This isn't about who failed. It's about who's pretending they didn't." Then he pointed to the chart. "Every delay in the last quarter traces to indecision hidden in polite language. This team doesn't need another framework. It needs a decision." No one interrupted. No one smiled. Celeste nodded once. "This recommendation, if we implement it, 3 directors lose face." Jason didn't flinch. "Or we lose another $9 million next quarter pretending they haven't already." Silence. Then someone from finance said, "He's right." And that was it. The room flipped. Jason walked out feeling the shift. He wasn't a consultant anymore. He was a threat. That night, he picked up Nora late. She waited with her coach at chess club, hoodie zipped up, hair messy. "How'd it go?" he asked. She held up a medal. "Second place." Jason smiled. "Proud of you." She looked up. "They didn't want me to win." He paused. "What do you mean?" "The other team kept whispering during my match, tried to distract me, called me lucky." Jason knelt. "What you do?" She shrugged. "Beat them anyway." Jason stared at her. She added, "Some people don't like when you play smarter than they expect." He nodded slowly. "I know the feeling." That weekend, Jason got another message, private, untraceable, from a burner Slack account. "Someone ran a reverse lookup on your badge. They're asking questions." No name. But he knew who sent it. Angela. Jason closed his laptop and realized time was running out. Jason didn't run. He'd made it this far by listening more than talking, moving just fast enough to stay useful and just quiet enough to stay ignored. But now, people were asking questions. Real ones. Someone in HR had flagged a background discrepancy. The contractor from DC had never confirmed start paperwork. The internal ID tied to Jason's badge traced back to a logistics system, not personnel. He got the first hint from security. A woman at the lobby scanner took a beat too long with his badge, looked at her screen, looked at him. "You're all set," she said, but her voice had changed. Jason nodded, walked calmly. Back on 27, his whiteboard was gone, desk cleared, no note, just a terminal message blinking on his screen, report to compliance. 10 o'clock a.m. Jason sat at the desk anyway, typed 3 lines of code, pulled up Angela's map, red zones expanding, green zones shrinking. He wasn't shocked. The company didn't get this big by rewarding outliers. They studied them, extracted them, then replaced them. At 9:45, he took the elevator down, past 5 people who didn't make eye contact. At 9:58, he walked into compliance. Glass walls, frosted doors, a single chair. Celeste was already inside. No coffee, no welcome. "Sit," Jason did. Across the table was a file, no logo, no fluff, just a name, Jason Shaw. Celeste opened it. No accusation, no warning, just the sentence he'd expected for weeks. "You don't work here." Jason nodded. "I figured this was coming. You knew and said nothing." "I said everything that mattered." She closed the file. "You understand what this means?" He nodded again. But she wasn't done. "Despite the irregularity, the audit you submitted corrected 3/4 of drift. The board saw it. They're asking why someone without clearance could outperform half the senior team." Jason didn't speak. She leaned forward. "You shouldn't be here, but the damage you do by leaving now might be worse." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a choice," Celeste said. "You walk out now, this all gets buried. We redact every trace of you. You get paid your contract rate. No benefits, no future." Jason sat still. "Or we sponsor you officially. Real onboarding, new title, NDA included." Jason looked at the door, then said quietly, "Why me?" Celeste didn't blink. "Because you didn't try to be a genius. You just told the truth." Jason leaned back, thought about Nora, about the rent, about the look on her face when she finally beat her coach, then said, "One condition." Celeste tilted her head. "Which is?" "I pick my own title." She stared, then nodded. Jason stood, extended a hand. "You already have it written?" she asked. He grinned. "Translator." The new badge came in a matte envelope, official ID, office access, a real paycheck with real benefits. Jason came home and tucked the badge into a drawer next to Nora's medal. That night, she asked him to run practice matches again. "You want to play tired old me?" he asked. "I want to see what mistakes you make when you're confident." He smiled. They played 4 games. She beat him in 3. Afterward, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you like your job?" Jason paused, then said, "It doesn't feel like a job." She thought about that, then asked, "Do they know you're not like them?" Jason chuckled. "Yeah, I think they figured that out." "Is that bad?" Jason looked her in the eye. "No, that's why I'm still there." Weeks passed. Jason built his own playbook, real strategy, not just slide decks. He started training mid-level managers how to talk across silos, not with jargon, with stories. He told them about his daughter once. "Chess is the only place where she gets to choose how the pieces move." One exec teared up. Another nodded like he finally understood something he'd been missing for years. Angela stopped by his office one day. "You survived." Jason smiled. "You helped." "I mostly just watched." They sat in silence. Then she said, "It's not over." Jason looked at her. She handed him a manila folder, unlabeled. "You're on a new list now," she said. "Bigger than this floor, bigger than this building." Jason didn't open it, just said, "Good, I was getting bored." That weekend, Nora entered a citywide tournament, final round. Late afternoon, her opponent had a coach, a trainer, and a parent who clapped too loudly. Jason stood by the door. Quiet, she played slow, precise. Final move came with 10 seconds left. Queen trap. Diagonal pin. Checkmate. The other girl's coach argued, said the clock glitched. That Nora moved too late. Jason didn't step in. Nora didn't either. She pulled up her tablet, showed the footage. Time-stamped. Clean. The judge nodded. Game stands. They handed her the trophy. She didn't smile. Until she found Jason outside. You saw, he nodded. Let them argue, she said. Jason smiled. Translator, she added. Jason blinked. What? That's what you are, right? That's your job. Jason looked at her. Yeah, he said. Guess I've been one a long time. Somewhere in the city, a boardroom buzzed. A file passed hand to hand, Jason's photo, his reports, his assent. One exec leaned forward. Keep him close. But watch the edges. Another added, he's not the mistake we thought. The first one frowned. No, he's the one that sees them.